You're probably wondering why somebody from Tesco is here. You probably think I should be filling up the shelves with baked beans or something like that. In fact, Tesco is a major fuel retailer, and I hope you've all got your club cards and you all fill up dutifully at Tesco on every opportunity. Tesco has been involved in biofuels for a great deal of time, and we've established or built up quite a lot of experience, and I'd like to share that with you today. I think it has some pointers that would be helpful in you developing your strategy for the marine area. By the end of this 20 minutes, I hope I will have convinced you of a few issues. One is that microbial contamination in fuel is not a new issue. It's been about for a long time, but it's a much larger challenge when it comes to biodiesel. It leads to operational problems, and you have a choice. You can either ignore the operational problems or you can face up to them. And if you don't, the microbial proliferation will occur, and you have some fairly serious issues. I think the other lesson that I'd like to share with you is that it's not something that you can solve on your own. It's something that really requires a collaborative, cooperative effort with your fuel supplier. And the key to successfully getting on top of the issues is it's all about preventative maintenance. It's no good really waiting for the problems to occur. You need to act in advance because the problems can be quite catastrophic. So this is what I'm going to talk about in outline. I'll talk about the problem from a road diesel perspective. Talk about the impact as Tesco's experienced it. Talk about what we found the root cause to be. Discuss some of the solutions that we've found to be effective, and give you some thoughts about the way forward. This isn't a little commercial. It is actually just designed to give you a bit of background on our involvement in the fuels business. Tesco today is the #1 fuel retailer in the UK. We have more than 440 stations dotted all over the UK, and Tesco offers biofuels in terms of E5 petrol and B7 diesel. We introduced biofuels back in 2005, which really means that Tesco was the first fuel retailer out there gaining experience with biofuels. And over the past 5 years, believe me, we've built up a lot of experience. Some of it the hard way, not too much of it the easy way. Every time you turn a corner with biofuels, there's another challenge. Just a little background. You may have covered this morning, but it's important to understand that biodiesel comes from many, many different sources: vegetable oils, animal fats. In fact, the most favourite source of biodiesel for road diesel use is used cooking oil. So once you've bought your Big Mac and they've shaken off the oil, that oil will eventually find its way into fuel. The UK in particular has a very, very wide range of biodiesel types, and I guess the bottom line is that biodiesel is completely chemically different from diesel. So any lessons that have been learnt with standard marine diesel, road diesel fuel, just don't apply to biodiesel. It's a different world. So what are the challenges? Well, there's a couple of challenges that bother us from a road diesel point of view, and should worry all of you too, because you're probably all car drivers. Microbial growth is the #1 issue, but also with biodiesel there are some issues in low temperature waxing, low temperature dropout that can cause filter blocking. Obviously today we're going to focus on the microbial issues, but to just give you confidence, Tesco's done a lot of work successfully in the low temperature area, so you can use your fuel from Tesco with complete assurance. So what is the problem? Well, the problem is there's an awful lot of bugs in diesel. These bugs, if left unchecked, will form biofuel all over the place. On tank walls, in pipes, in filters. They particularly like little crevices that are difficult to clean. And in our case, really what happened were block filters. So in other words, when people went to fill up at the pump dispenser, no fuel came out. I didn't warn you that I was going to show you some dirty pictures, but here's the first one of them. This is what's known in the business as a witch's hat filter. It's called a witch's hat because it's got a point on the top. And it's actually the first filter that the fuel sees as it's drawn out of the tank, ultimately going through the nozzle to a car's tank. Pretty nasty looking stuff. It doesn't always look like this. Sometimes it looks like that. I won't try and describe what that looks like. Probably not a very nice, it smells too. I only show you those, and in fact my colleague from Eurotank that we've done a great deal of cooperative work with will show you a great deal, many more pictures which will give you much greater insight. But I just put them into this presentation just to show you that we are talking about a very real issue. This is not a cosmetic problem. This is something that really can cause major operational difficulties. So what's the impact? The impact is blocked filters, shut down pumps, customer disruption. It means that we have to carry out a great deal more tank maintenance, which is necessary but expensive. So it's hard work and it costs money. I have to say something from a customer perspective. Obviously the Tesco priority is to protect customers, and we have looked in great detail at the impact on customer vehicles and found no negative impact from microbial activity on customers' vehicles. The irony is, of course, the blocked filters stop the deposits getting out into the vehicle tank. And as a testament to all of that, we can certainly say that we filled over 50 million cars successfully last year. So we take the issue very seriously. Well, when we first saw this deposit, we didn't know what it was. We didn't know if it was additives dropping out or waxing or some other stuff coming from someplace else. So we actually carried out an investigation. We looked at all points through the supply chain. So we went back to the fuel terminal where the fuel was coming from. We looked at delivery tank trucks. We looked throughout our filling station tanks and pumps and everywhere. And we did this with a particular purpose. We tried to determine where microbial activity was occurring and what the level was. And we also measured water content, because as you'll also learn as we go along here, it's water that supports microbial activity, and there's a lot of water in diesel fuel. So we were very much tracking where water was sitting around, not just in the bottom of tanks, but also dispersed in the fuel. So the whole process is really to identify the source of microbial activity, so we could establish what the root cause was, and we could also understand what the control points were so that we could start addressing the problem. So what were our findings? Well, bugs were everywhere. Microbes were everywhere we looked. On tank walls, in pipes and filters, in terminals, filling stations, everywhere you wanted to look. More importantly, we found microbial activity not as the traditional thinking is in the bottom of tanks, in the water layer, but we also found bugs very active actually up in the fuel layer. Now, again, the traditional thinking is if the bugs are sitting at the bottom of the tank in the water layer, they'll sit there and they'll play nice and not go down and get distributed into the rest of the distribution chain. But when they're up in the fuel, clearly the risk is that they will go and infect the rest of the system. Couple of learnings here. We thought, well, we'll change the filters, that will solve the problem. It didn't. They blocked again very quickly. So then we thought, well, we'll use some biocide. Actually, I think as Ed will say, Ed Wheeler, we used biocides on some occasions and the bugs came back with a vengeance. We actually believe that we may have been killing some of the good guys, and the bad guys survived, and they had a field day once the competition had been removed. And in fact, we saw on occasions bugs even more active. So we basically found that if the right actions weren't taken, filter blocking could rapidly reoccur. So this isn't a matter of doing the simple stuff. You've got to attack the real problem. So a few more observations which I think are useful at this point. It was difficult to predict where problems would occur. We couldn't categorize our filling stations and say this one is more vulnerable than another. But some filling stations were very seriously affected and some were not affected at all. We did see some regional pattern to it, and I'll talk about that a bit more in a moment. We actually also found it was a summer and a winter issue. The problem first started actually in the fairly warm summer of, let me see now, it would be 1997. And we got to September and the weather started to cool down, and my boss said to me, "Thank goodness the weather has got cooler. The bugs will start growing less vigorously and the issue won't be as significant." Wrong. They kept growing through the end of the year and were active during January and February too. So it's not a seasonal issue. What we found was that very constant monitoring was required, because a single result doesn't necessarily tell you what's going on. It's very important to look at to monitor trends to really understand what's going on in the tanks and in the systems. So here's what we assessed the root cause to be, and I stressed this was the root cause from a road diesel point of view. When we looked carefully at the incidents, we did find that they were concentrated around specific supply points. In other words, concentrated around certain terminals. And those terminals that were most problematic, indeed, we found them to have very high water levels and microbial levels in the tanks. So we did conclude, and this is not in any vindictive or critical way, we did determine that the terminals were the primary source of contamination. And clearly what we were seeing was that there was enough turbulence in the tank that was sending these microbes downstream and infecting filling station, which ultimately led to the operational problems. Dr. Joan Kelly is going to speak after me, is a real microbiologist. I'm just a simple old chemist, so I really shouldn't be talking about mechanisms, but I will hazard just a little bit of an input for you. I think what we know is that biodiesel attracts water. It's hygroscopic. And water is an essential ingredient for bugs to grow. Biodiesel also turns out to be a Big Mac for microbes. They love it. It's a rich food source. They can't get enough of it. We know also that biodiesel has very poor water shedding properties. So it's actually quite a good surfactant and disperses water. And what we actually did find, and we have some microscopic evidence of it, we could see actually bugs growing in the fuel layer attached to the very small water droplets. So this isn't hazy fuel. This would be fuel that would look clear. You know, you would say it looks great, but there would be bug activity there. Once the bugs have a chance to get going, they'll create biofilm, and once biofilm, it's a bit like them building a housing estate. They're established, and then they can let rip, and it really does lead to bug proliferation. And by that point, you're well beyond the point of control. You've lost control. You can't retrieve the situation. You've got to take some significant remedial action, and I'll talk about that in a moment too. So basically, it was a question of contaminated fuel getting into the downstream system, causing problems. So what was the solution? Well, the solution for us was a cooperative effort with our fuel suppliers. We worked with them by monitoring the condition of fuel in tanks, monitoring water levels, and really focused on controlling microbial activity in the terminal tanks. What we found was absolutely critical was water management and regular water draining of terminal tanks. And not only that, thorough cleaning too. The biofilm loves to grow all over the place, form all over the place. You'll get biofilm in little crevices, and if it's left behind, it will cause problems. So thorough cleaning, and Edward Wheeler, who will be talking later in the program, Eurotank have developed some very effective and very innovative cleaning procedures, not only on the tanks but also on the lines, which has proven to be extremely effective. So preventative maintenance and monitoring. You have to act before the problems occur. And I have to say, it's hard work. There is no silver bullet with this. So the way forward. Well, I think the way forward is this sort of forum we're having today. And I've spoken on a number of occasions. I think any time that we have the opportunity to build awareness of the risks and the problems, I think is good, because it does require a cooperative effort. It does, blind eyes don't work too well in this situation. There is a need to face up to the issues. And I hope, as I've done today, an opportunity to share experience, share best practice. This isn't an area for competitive advantage. This is a game of doing things right, and Tesco's been very open, working with our competitors, with our suppliers, and sharing the experience, and I think that cooperative effort has really paid dividends. So it is about controlling microbial activity and water content. It is about good housekeeping, preventative maintenance, and I have to say, I still believe the industry is looking for even better and more effective microbial testing kits, and Tesco and Eurotank, for our part, are extremely interested in the tests that Canidia have developed, and we are doing some trialling and testing of that in our filling station network. So that's it for me. I hope you found that interesting. How are we dealing with questions? Are we going to do some now or later?
We'll do them
okay, fine.
After Joan Kelly's given her presentation.
Well, thank you very much.
If you'd like to sit here with me.